Hello 101, welcome back. Hopefully you're all surviving quarantine well. Things are starting to get weird around here. Last night at Easter dinner, my wife asked me if I could clear the table. I was like, psh, hold my beer. I needed a running start, but I made it. This week you've got a couple of things to start and keeping track of and handle, kind of multitasking at once, and we'll look at them in detail here in a second. The first is obviously you would like to have your final version of your rhetorical analysis finished by the 19th, because that's when it's due, by the 19th. So do it. Your rough drafts from me should be coming back to you shortly. I've tried to give time in between for peers to respond so that it's not just my review that you're looking at, but also each other's. My review is only going to be as thick as necessary. If the other person has said what needs to be addressed, then that's kind of what I'm going to tell you is, hey, look, they were on it. If there's other things that I can add, of course I will. Anyway, we move on. So, this week, we begin looking at what your final paper is, an argument from observation. An argument from observation is not the same as a scholarly argument. Think of it more as an opinion editorial, an informed opinion editorial, meaning yes, you need sources, but no, those sources need not be scholarly sources. And in fact, it works better if they're not. They can be anything from anywhere. The thing that you used for your rhetorical analysis may indeed become a source for you in your final paper. What is an argument from observation? I'm glad you asked. Let's take a look at the ones that you have to read, as well as a little bit of theory to sort of help you gauge what that one is up to. And then you'll be set for this week's assignments, as well as a way to start thinking about what it is that you are going to write your final paper about. Let's take a look. 14, and if your life, like mine, is currently in any way shared, here's where we all are. But don't worry, it's fine. Life waits for no one, and does it not wait for us either. So, we move on. What do you have this week is actually not all that bad. You owe 2 readings this week, a journal and a regular assignment. Let's look at the assignment first. Cody Delastrati writes an argument that deals with commercializing of counterculture, particularly what they call the commodification or hegemonic of counterculture, and how summer music festivals, as an example of counterculture in this case, have kind of gone mainstream. They've become a corporate entity. Thought it might be kind of fun, particularly since this summer most of the music festivals are going to either drastically change and or disappear entirely. It'll be interesting to see how perhaps this argument or observation that Delastrati has made reemerges once the counterculture changes its format. How does everything else respond? But that's just sort of an English professor geek wondering. So give that a read. Then you have 3 questions to answer that you saw there. And those 3 questions should be answered in complete thoughts and coherent ideas. You do not have to string them together as a separate or as a single response. They can be separate answers to separate questions, but please don't assume the author or assume that, right? Write complete established thoughts as if somebody has only loosely read this and you're not writing it just for me, but get in the habit of using author name, author title, right? Quoting when you need to, even if it's just an answer to a question. Do it. The other reading that you have is a journal entry, right? Postman and Powers, and if you've used your journal, you can't skip this one. This is an argument from observation about the bias of language and the bias of pictures. It's by 2 authors that you are now somewhat familiar with, Neil Postman and Steve Powers, and it's in your They Say, I Say. Give it a read and then address this question as a journal response. Again, you want to make sure that you quote and get used to using author names, titles, verbs of attribution, right? All these little things that we're going to ask of you in your own essay. These 2 readings are examples of arguments from observation. They are informed opinions. They're not just merely open editorials about somebody ranting and raving, but rather have sources, right? Both of these contain a number of sources. Now, none of the sources are particularly scholarly based, right? But all of them refer to vetted or rather known entities of instances of this occurring. In other words, he's going to talk to people at the festival. He's going to ask questions of other people. He's going to use, I think, the Jimmy Kimmel Show becomes a source in this argument. And that is kind of the difference of an argument of observation to a scholarly argument, meaning that it's not based in scholarly research, but rather it's based in general populative research, right? You are a reading, thinking, critically analytical human being in this world, and so you've looked around and observed these things. This video here, What the Theory, is actually just a mini lecture on what cultural hegemony is and an introduction to Gramsci. Because to know or really get what Delestrade is talking about, you actually have to know a little bit about that. It's not terribly long, it is pretty insightful, and it will give you a good understanding of then what it is that Delestrade is up to. So watch this, then read this, by then do this, by then. Balancing that against, yes, of course, your rhetorical analysis final. I've been waiting for you guys to hand in or do your peer reviews, and then I will go through and do a review as well. If the peer reviewer has sort of addressed the things that I would address, I'll say so. If there are things that they've missed or left out or just haven't done it, I will also engage in those. I am not going to go through and change every last sentence of yours, right? Otherwise, it's my paper. It's incumbent on you to seek this stuff out and get other eyes to read it and other ideas involved. I'll try to offer the best help I can, but I'm not going to go through and perfect it for you, because otherwise, what's the point in that? If you do have further questions, please don't hesitate to email or ask, and I'll be sure to address them. But you need to balance having to do this against both of these, right? And again, watch this to help you with this. And that will get you through week 14.
Okay, that's it. You've seen most of the stuff. Now you've seen some of the little video about Gramsci and his theory on cultural hegemony and what that looks like. And when we talk about arguments of observation, your argument from observation does not have to deal in cultural hegemony. That's more of a humanities, English, history type subject. But if it does, well, then you can use that. But it's just another way to think about how to make an observation that's informed and an argument that results from that observation, and then extend that into something real. Theoretical stuff. Anyway, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email. I'd be happy to try to clear up any questions and concerns that you have. And I guess last, I'll leave you with this piece of advice. In a growing age of online commerce and commodification, don't buy anything made of Velcro. It's a ripoff. See you next week.